I'm going to delete the Spline IK control and the helper objects that it created and start from scratch. Actually, I'll delete the bone chain as well. So with our spline in place, at the base of the neck, somewhere around the upper shoulders, middle of the body, and down at the base of the body. I'm going to actually start by using the Spline IK modifier. Like I said, I don't use the Spline IK solver, but I do use the Spline IK modifier because this is a very handy modifier. It automatically will build new control objects at every vertice in the spline and sets them up very nicely, just like if you had a linked X form in the stack, several linked X forms, and spline selects. So it makes it much easier and simpler in the stack. You can just press create helpers and it'll create all the helper objects. You can then set a size for all those helper objects to make it really simple. You can also choose how they are going to be displayed. I'll leave that set on box. I also set it to no linking because linking sets it up so that the base will control all of them. We don't want this to happen. We want each one to be independent. For the bones, I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm going to keep 5 bones only for our spline, just to make it simple on the setup. This way we have less setup to do for this tutorial, but you can use as many bones as you like. Create system bones. I'm going to keep them down to a size of 2. And I want to create a set of bones. These don't even need to be sized perfectly correctly at this point because we'll be aligning them to the spline and aligning them to controls along the spline as we go. I'm just going to leave this off to one side for now, and you'll see how we connect that into the spline later on. The next thing I want to create is some control objects. I'm going to use those nice little control objects that I use for my rigs, built from splines, and I'm just using that scripted tool that I have for building those. Again, you can build those using circles and attaching them all together. I have seen people build these out of 3 circles and use the group control to actually group all 3 of them together. I would strongly suggest against this, as grouping can cause other problems. These controls are going to control this spinal column. Some of them are going to be directly controlled, basically on a one-to-one basis. Others are going to be controlled with a bit of a fall off between 2. So we're going to be using some constraints for this. First thing I like to do is get my axis aligned to the correct spot on the spline so that it isn't floating out in space, the pivot point. I'm going to go to the hierarchy panel, pivot, effect pivot only, use my align tool, and align position X, Y, Z, pivot to pivot. I happen to have added it to a quad menu, and I want to align them up to the control object they're directly going to be affecting. So you can see that the pivot's in the same spot for both objects now. Now I'm going to do a bit of linking. I'm going to link top control here for the spline to the control object we'll be animating with. I'll be linking the one at the hips directly to the hip control, and the tailbone straight to the tailbone helper, our control object. Now you can see I can pick the controls, and I have some effect on the spline. I'm now still missing out on 2 controls.